Hey, okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next session. I say again, we're going to go ahead and get started with our next session. Cool, thank you. So, hey, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. David Poland, our Client Solutions Executive for AT&T, and proud to say it's on the Army side. Cool, right?
Cool.
Still doing Army?
Yep.
All right. Sir, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just retired from the Army a couple of years ago. I filled a slot that Rich DeBrill held some time ago. That's why I had big shoes to fill. So we're going to talk to you a little bit today about how infrastructure improvements, what it's going to do on military installations, and improving operations for the military. So one of the problems we have for the military is it's big, and a lot of installations, a lot of sites. I know in the Army Reserve we had over 800 locations spread throughout the United States. When you throw in the Corps of Engineers and other organizations like that, there are literally thousands of buildings and facilities that they run all over the country. And so what we're looking to do right now is to try to improve that, help them with building management, asset management, with perimeter security, even fleet management. And there's a lot of things that we can do with the Internet of Things to help them improve their operations, and we're going to go through some of those. So obviously, one thing we can do with the Internet of Things is improve situational awareness. We could put sensors into vehicles, into pieces of equipment, into real estate to do a lot of things for you. We can monitor not only where is the truck, but how is that driver performing, which if you've seen me drive, you know that makes me a little uncomfortable, but we can check on professional drivers. We can measure trash dumpsters and how much garbage is in the trash. What's the temperature like in the building? Large buildings have more than one air conditioner, so when one starts to fail, maybe you can detect a problem and get that air conditioner back up and running before the second or third piece of equipment fails and we get a customer complaint. There's a wide range of sensors that we're going to talk about that we can report back to the customer and help them management from a distance. But we also have command and control, whether you're turning on lights or opening up gates or communicating with your soldiers in the field. And at the end, I'll talk a lot about FirstNet, but there's a lot of things we can do to help the installation control their units and coordinate with them downrange. The key here is that we integrate a lot of different things. Obviously, AT&T makes a broad range of technology, but we don't make everything. Right now, we're bringing in a company called Ghost Robotics. They make a robotic dog, and the dog could go out with cameras and do patrols. I'm hoping that by TechNet or one of these days I can walk into my booth with a dog following me that just happens to be a robot, and we have that now. But there's a lot of things that we can do. We have to integrate sensors from a wide range of companies. One of the sensors we're going to talk about, Inevo, I helped on board to AT&T. And I told my executives when I was briefing this that Inevo is for a trash dumpster, that if you're at AT&T and you're thinking about garbage, you think about Dave Poland. And so we integrate all of these solutions together to make systems. The key is that they have to be secure and they have to be reliable. One of the things with security is like with a trash dumpster, who cares if they know how much trash you have? But you also know that a whole lot of data, pieces of data that individually mean nothing and have no value, when you start adding them all up, now they mean something. So I'm stationed outside of Fort Bragg, and what I don't want to do, I'm sure that the Russians and the Chinese know exactly which brigade and which headquarters live in which building. So if they're trying to determine when is this brigade rolling out, or are the news stories true that we're sending soldiers somewhere, and they see that 1st Brigades suddenly has a surge in trash, and then their trash drops to zero, what you just saw were the soldiers cleaning out their barracks, getting ready for a deployment, and dropping to zero when they left. That's garbage. Now, would garbage tell you that by itself? But no, but a lot of other things about the units and trying to confirm data you could get from garbage. So I want to make sure that everything we do is very secure. So as we talk about security, the security is going to come from a lot of different places. One is we're going to obviously encrypt everything. We're even encrypting that trash sensor. We're certainly going to encrypt camera data coming back. We want to encrypt communications of the first responders, so as the police and paramedics are picking up the scene, that not everybody can listen to them. We're also going to make sure that we're bringing everything into isolated networks. That means that you're on a virtual private network VPN. At AT&T, we call it the AVPN. And then we could also route our traffic specifically within given networks, isolated private networks, to ensure that no one else is able to monitor that. With AT&T's FirstNet, we actually have an independent core for FirstNet, so as those first responders are communicating, it's not routed with the rest of AT&T's traffic. It's using our frequencies and our spectrum, but it's routed differently so that it's more secure. So we have a framework of systems that we're looking at right now. One of them is public safety. We could do everything from gunshot detection to cameras. Obviously, this would get involved with your paramedics and first responders. Video intelligence. We also have protect your fleet that I've mentioned before, tracking your vehicles, where your vehicle's at, how are they performing, what's the condition of the vehicle in. We can do things like that with our wide range of sensors. And then we look at infrastructure management, making sure that we can turn down or turn up the heat or the air conditioner or utilities within those buildings and manage that from remotely. We could also detect problems within the system. We can do video intelligence of anything that's going on. Waste management. I've talked a lot about the trash sensor because I had a part of that. It's probably the one thing here I know best, ironically. Asset tracking. With asset tracking, it's not just where is the piece of equipment, but it's where is the piece of equipment specifically. And I'll give you a couple of examples. If the Department of Public Works sends out a bulldozer or a piece of large equipment to their training areas in the installation, sometimes, hey, Joe parked that thing. Where did Joe park that? He's off today. You can find it with our asset tracking. But better than that, what if you have a significant piece of equipment, an expensive piece of equipment, arriving at the warehouse with all the many other things that you could come in? We could put trackers on those devices so that you can find out specifically where they are in the warehouse. Besides asset management, we also have base support, engaging with people for helping people navigate, making sure that people have Wi-Fi when they travel because they have assets, they have resources. I walked in here with 2 phones today. Did anybody work in here with less than 2 phones today? Making sure that the customers have access to whatever data that they need in the kiosks. Even when I check into the USO as a veteran, I can check into the USO as I'm walking in the door. I had a lady at the airport the other day get a little disgusted with me because she showed up at the counter and I wasn't checked in yet. So I thought that's what you do at the counter. But you can do that with resources when you have enough of the infrastructure. We have a whole portfolio of equipment and sensors and connectivity. Our solutions across the top, we talked about video surveillance, digital infrastructure, smart-based lighting. You know, the street lights in your neighborhood right now are really 1960s technology. They come on at a certain dimness. As evening comes, daylight, they turn it off. I have a high-tech one on my house. They turn on when the light, they'll be active when the lights go down when it gets dark outside, but someone has to walk by my house and then the motion actually turns it on. Woohoo! Well, now with smart-based lighting, we can actually go to LED lighting and we can have more control over those lights to turn them on or off based on what's going on in that area, based on what the people are doing, when the people need the lighting, when we need to secure an area. There's a lot of things we can do. FirstNet, I'm going to cover in more depth toward the end. When you get all of this data, what are you going to do with all of this data? One of the things you want to do is analytics. You want to start measuring data so you know what the baseline performance is. And then you can do predictive maintenance. You can also determine the quantity of assets that you need. If you're finding out that a certain asset, be it a vehicle or a trash dumpster or whatever it is that you're monitoring, is not widely utilized, do we need that many? And you could start to reduce your fleet. You can reduce the trips that they take or the pickups that they do. There's a lot of things like that. Also, we got to determine where to manage that data. We were working with a sensor earlier this year where when you walked into a hospital, it could read your temperature. And if you're running a high temperature, you were diverted from somewhere else because we wanted to check and see if you had COVID as opposed to having you walk into the general population. And that's where we get back to security, because with HIPAA rules, your temperature, your body temperature, is actually a piece of your medically identifiable information. We got to separate that from you and manage that in a way that's appropriate according to existing law. Let's see here. Obviously, we want to we could do a lot of things with machine learning and artificial intelligence to enhance the data that we're getting back. The big piece here is really the multi-network connectivity. So you hear a lot about 5G, and I recall at the beginning of the coronavirus, I had friends of mine asking me if it was true that 5G is the coronavirus or 5G was causing the coronavirus. Obviously not. But they're all concerned with the waveform because the 5G waveform is a tighter wave than what we used before with 4G. But there's a lot more to 5G than just the waveform. 5G includes edge computing, meaning that we could put technology closer to you on that pole, be it the small pole or the big pole, that will actually anticipate what you're going to download next, and it can start pulling that data down in advance to reduce the amount of latency. If you're watching a video, once you start watching that video as you're watching it at normal speed, through our backhaul, through our fiber optic, we can be pulling in the rest of that video so when you're ready to watch it, you can continue on. 5G also uses multiple access routing, meaning that part of your signal, some of your packets may go through that signal to the cell tower. But if you're standing near a Wi-Fi, some of your packets might actually go through that Wi-Fi. And there's different routes that the signal can take. And we have smart technology that determines, based on what you are doing at the time, where are we going to route that traffic. And of course, with the Internet of Things, adding to what's going across our spectrum, managing our connectivity is a big piece of that. And then obviously we have SIM devices and agents and devices. These are the things, including wearables, that people can use. I really am a big fan of the body cameras on police or the body temperature sensors and physical sensors on firemen, so that as they're out doing their thing, the desk sergeant can watch the engagement as it's happening instead of watching the video later, or he can monitor the condition of that firefighter in the building. So we say, hey, Smith over here is having a problem, let's go get him, or this is where he is during a collapse. But all these wearables and stuff like that come into play. And so I've covered a lot of area, but the point is that we're bringing all of this technology together at one time. Our improved communications, our improved sensors, analytics, and measuring what we're getting off of those sensors, just a wide range of things are all being pulled together into one piece. So you're getting a lot of data. What are you going to do with all of that data? What we do is we pull that into our integrated control center. We want to bring it into one place where it's easy for the people who need that information to get to it, and where the people who shouldn't have that information can't get to it. And so what we have is our wide range of technology from smart cities pulled into the command center and then distributed out to the right agencies on your post or within your chain of command, all under one pane of glass. And this is what it looks like. You can do this on a tablet, you could do this on a desktop, but the integrated control center brings you into one pane of glass that you manage. You can go in and set the permissions for who in your agency needs permission to do what. We can have your maintenance people have their these are the things that they need to measure as a maintenance guy. We can have your people who manage your services, managing, where are my trash sensors, where are my deliveries, where it was whatever happening. You can have your security personnel in another segment, but you can set the permissions. But it gives enhanced situational awareness based on your access. You can go in and check on the condition of a wide range of things. It can reduce incident response time because with the right people monitoring the screens or going in to check the screens periodically, they can predict something that's about to happen. We have more efficient collaboration. I could call up and say, hey, did you see this? You're my partner in the services department. Can you see what's going on? Big thing is manpower savings. I know in some installations, probably a lot more than not, we have people whose job it is to drive around with trucks and check how much fuel is in that tank and check how much trash is in that dumpster. With fuel tanks, it's not just quantity. I don't know if anybody's ever had to work with logistics. I had the pleasure of working with logisticians for a year in Iraq, and I learned more about fuel than I ever wanted to know. But it consolidates water, and fuel also consolidates sludge. And right now, the existing technique for determining when you're got too much water in your tank or too much sludge is to open the tank up, look into the flashlight. And when you're only pulling up water or the hose down the bottom, the entrance point, is clogging up, well, then you know it's time to empty the tank and clean it out. Well, how about if we had two different floats, because oil and water don't mix, right? So what if we had a sensor that could determine when a quantity of water reached a certain point in comparison to the oil, so we now know it's time to go ahead and drain that tank and clean it out. So instead of having people drive around all day looking at tanks, we can have sensors that will report back when we need that. So there's tremendous cost savings there. And then we talk about integration with third-party sensors. I think I mentioned earlier that we take sensors from WellAware, from Anevo, from Monit, a wide range of people that we have partnered with to provide you the most cutting-edge technology and sensors. This is my favorite piece because I helped bring this on board, but this is an example of the integrated control system at work. If you look in the top right-hand corner, that's actually a map of Fort Bragg, where the person could say, where is my trash dumpster? And they could go in on the map and see where it is. The guy who's signed for, in the Army we sign for things, the guy monitors those trash dumpsters, with his day job and taking care of this, it took him 2 months to do an inventory. Well, now we can look to see where things are. Dumpsters get picked up and moved. If your asset that you're looking at should not leave your installation, we can geofence it, which means that if it leaves a certain boundary where it's not supposed to be, it sends you an alert that says, hey, I've just been left your installation. The fill level in this particular dumpster was at 11%. I only put in 2 for a test to show DPW what it could do, and they discovered that, well, hey, at this food facility, dining facility, we don't want to let the trash wait. It has to be picked up every day because it attracts raccoons and mice and everything else, right? But at 11% per day, we have 4 dumpsters. Maybe we could go to 1. There was another building where they discovered that they thought office trash would not nearly keep up with the mess hall. They found that they had a lot more office trash than they ever dreamed they did. So a lot of things they found out and a lot of changes they can make to make it pay for itself. And as I explained before, this is garbage, but I wanted to make sure it was encrypted because of the type of aggregating data we were talking about. But all this is an example of looking at a particular asset with the integrated control system. And then we get into FirstNet. FirstNet's a big thing at AT&T. So back in 9/11, I'm sure everybody here remembers where you were on that day. And you also remember that one of the problems that we had was that first responders were all on different radio networks. So firemen, paramedics, and the police departments could not talk to each other, especially once the agencies really began to flood into the location. So throughout the 9/11 Commission, that was one of the things they sought to resolve, and they formed the FirstNet Authority within the U.S. government, and FirstNet was born. It was bid out in 2017. I think we were the only large company to bid on it, and we've been putting things in action ever since. This means a lot to me. Rich DeBrill and I shared a job with the Army Reserve, running operations for the communications for the Army Reserve, the G6. And during my tenure there, we had Hurricane Maria. And I got a call from a sat phone, literally as the rain was pulling off of the island, to say, hey, we just got hammered. We need help. And I was proud AT&T Tower stayed up. I wasn't proud at the time because I didn't know I was going to AT&T. But I'm proud now that we kept our stuff up. But the communications were really terrible, and we had to bring in we had to find ways for the soldiers whose families were devastated, who were digging out their own homes, to make it to the Army Reserve Center to use military expeditionary systems to get communications back up on the island. So, having first responders means a big deal. So now we have FirstNet. When we say it's America's public safety network, this isn't like the Dallas Cowboys saying, hey, we're America's team because we're proud of ourselves. It is America's network. We just happen to be contracted out to build it. And we have assets in place on Puerto Rico and around the southeast in Georgia. And as hurricanes come off the coast of Florida, like you heard the speaker say earlier today, we can start to move those assets into position. We've participated in forest fires out west, trying to support the LNs as they went into the countryside fighting large forest fires. So with FirstNet, you get it's a cell phone. It's really a really good cell phone plan. You have a different SIM chip, though, that differentiates you when you log on to the network so that you're routed through that FirstNet core, which is, again, a private core just for you, and it's encrypted. We give priority and preemption. What that means is when the spectrum, the radio spectrum from your cell phone to the tower, we share that with our customers. And we have a piece of spectrum called band 14. I think it's the 700 megahertz. I'm not sure, but it's band 14 that propagates really well through obstacles and over distance. It belongs to FirstNet, and so AT&T runs that. And during the day, all of our commercial customers are using this frequency. You might be making a call today, and based on an algorithm, you might be going over band 14. But in the event that there's an issue where police are called and that police officer's key in his mic, or the paramedic, or a wearable that the officer or the fireman are wearing is communicating, that data gets priority going over the network. If it's a big event, like a large fire or a crisis, and more first responders begin pouring in, then they're actually preempted, meaning that other users are bounced off and only the first responders can use as much, all that spectrum, all of it goes to them. It's on 24 hours a day. I've talked about the security, and we have a lot of the DoD buying into this, including the Army Reserve. So the next time that whoever's left, I think Colonel Davis is in our place now, he has this asset on Puerto Rico. And FirstNet is open for the military. When I told you before it's America's network, the FirstNet Authority, we can't sell this to just anybody. We sell this to people who are qualified. And there are primary and there are extended primary users. Primary users are all of your first responders out in the field. Your primary eligible are those users that support them. The Army Reserve, the National Guard would be considered extended primary. Hospitals would be extended primary. Some of your assets within the Internet of Things that I was talking about earlier qualify and can become extended primary, because obviously if the infrastructure is damaged, when we bring in our deployable assets to restore the infrastructure, you still need security on that base, right? You still need security of key assets. You probably need to measure specific assets that you're going to consume during this crisis. So we have a deployable assets that we'll bring in with FirstNet to bring the network back up as the network's gone down. So we've talked about a few things here. We integrate with our trusted networks. We bring in the AT&T as a whole, the FirstNet network, 5G. And I talked to you about MEC is the edge computing. We support a large and diverse ecosystem of sensors. That's the portfolio I talked to you about with Monet sensors and Evo sensors, WellAware and so forth. And we've talked to you about AT&T's backup. We talked about security. This is our control center 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have all this backing us up. And then our cybersecurity standards, everything that is backed up and controlled by AT&T, and customer service. The FirstNet guys in particular, they have their own customer service desk that they bring to bear with that. So with that, do I have any questions? Sir? So he asked if if FirstNet has a dedicated 5G spectrum. It's not that the spectrum that is dedicated. Let me back up. So FirstNet is an all-band solution. So band 14 was specifically, we have control of that specifically for FirstNet, and that's where the first responders are going to go first because it's such a good piece of the spectrum. But the waveform across that would be 5G or 4G. And as we go to 5G, that's like everything else, it's enhancing our capability. So for example, the video or the wearable and the fireman, those types of things are bandwidth intensive. As we go to 5G, those things get better and better for the first responder. Yes, sir? I don't really know what they're going to do. I know that my guess is that I'm guessing, so I shouldn't even say that. I would think that they're probably looking for industry for recommendations. Are they going to develop standards? I don't know. Yes, sir.
How are you securing all that data that's around?
How do we secure it? So we secure it a whole different way, a lot of ways. First of all, with encryption. It's encrypted from the telephone all the way to the tower. From there, it's on fiber optic cable. And when it gets to the tower and it's running all of our backhaul, that's on virtual private networks. It's isolated. And we monitor that network 24/7. And then, see, there was encryption, there was the AVPN, and just the fact that we isolate those networks. Separate classification levels. I mean, we could. That would depend on the need. I think right now, for me, you have to lock things up or secure things based on how important are they. And obviously, like FirstNet, for example, that's pretty critical. And as we get to 5G, the encryption gets better and better and better. But as far as raising the security level, I think it's going to matter depending on the asset involved. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, can you say it here? Is FirstNet tied in with single sign-on? I don't know the answer. I think so. Because I know that when the users are out in the field, if you're a squad sergeant, for example, and you have your tablet, you can, you're going to be talking, you're going to be communicating with your tablet, seeing where all of your resources are, where people are moving. There's a whole range of apps that come with FirstNet, in addition to the whole range of sensors and devices. And I don't believe that the operator has to log into each of those individually, so I believe the answer is yes.
The Nighthawks, your Wi-Fi capability. So that is basically our carrier, right? That's how we signal. We still have to have a government authorized device as a carrier. Right? So I would use my DoD laptop. I would use his 5G with AT&T FirstNet as my Wi-Fi, but I would still have to log in with a government authorized device. So some of our tablets that we have that we'll use for real world responses, whether it's suburban enterprise and then hurricane, whatever, those are open access tablets, right? You hit Google, you hit the regular commercial internet, you don't have an authorized device for the DoD network. So what is the get to this? So that's right. Yeah, just like just think if you go to your hotel and you're on Wi-Fi in your hotel, right? You log in, you VPN, and you log in, you're good.
So you don't need a government device for FirstNet. You need a FirstNet device. You need our SIM chip, which has been authorized on the network. But what I hear what you're saying is you have FirstNet and you're tunneling through FirstNet with your own encryption for your own devices. All right. I thought I saw quite, yes, sir.
Yes, to answer your question about SSO, FirstNet does have SSO capability. There are SDKs and APIs on development for FirstNet. Each vendor that wants to develop an application, FirstNet or application afterwards, they can incorporate that capability into their application.
Any other questions? Everybody wants to go to lunch. All right, thank you.
Hey, sir, so again, thank you, and we got just a very small token of appreciation for being here today.
Thank you.
So much for being part of the conference. Appreciate
Awesome.
it. At this time, for everyone else, we're going to start lunch just about 5 minutes early. So we're on lunch until 1 o'clock. So I would ask that please, here at 1 o'clock will be our next large keynote speaker, Major General Phillips from the 335th Signal Command. So him and General Carden that you heard from this morning were actually Academy classmates. So another dynamic speaker. So it will be a joint session. So our state partners or the local government track and the federal track will be back in here together at 1 o'clock. So I just ask, please make sure you're in your seats. at 1 o'clock so we can get started with Major General Phillips. Cool? And then I think everybody knows where the bathroom is. We've figured out bathrooms. And also want to ask you, please make sure you visit our vendors as you're on break and some of our guest speakers as you catch them in the hallway for additional questions, additional conversations. But again, spend some time at the vendors table, please. Thank you.